My name is Stevie Chandler. I am a graduate of Milford High School. I am 19 years old and I have published my first novel, The Rules Are Simple Survive, the first part in a three-part trilogy that I have been signed on to with Stevie Publishing. I have dyslexia and I was diagnosed when I was in third grade, which my mother knew I had it far before that point, for the timely struggles of trying to do the simplest homework, from spelling tests to memorizing vocabulary to just learning how to read in general. I had always struggled. So when I hit third grade and we finally had the opportunity to diagnose my dyslexia, it was a no-brainer. I did show most of the signs of it, and I am happy I did get an IEP eventually. I was never very good in school. I didn't really like it. I felt like I was dumb. I did not feel very smart at all compared to the other students because I was a little bit different than them. I thought a little bit different than all of them. And it wasn't until I hit about sixth grade that I realized that thinking different was actually okay. I had a teacher named Mr. Jacobs who taught at Meadowview Elementary, and he was a math teacher. I never really liked math like most students. I didn't like English either. I didn't like much of anything. But when I was in math, he started showing different ways to do the exact same equation. And while working with him and Mr. Fisher, I realized that I really could learn. I just learned different from everybody else. Finding my own issues and finding what I could improve on and what helped me, I didn't feel dumb anymore. And I didn't have to be taken out of class anymore by the time I got to seventh grade. I could function in a normal classroom. I could do all of the same work as everybody else. And eventually I became the top of my class. Every essay I wrote, I got A's. Every written report was an A or a B, as long as they didn't count grammar still. But I continued to work on that, and when I hit freshman year in high school, I decided that I wanted to write. I decided that I wasn't going to let this fear that I wasn't going to be good enough anymore control me. So I began to write. Of all things, I began to write fan fiction. I started writing it when I was a freshman in high school. On a whim, I was just bored one day and I just started typing. I managed to get 100,000 words and over 10,000 views on a single fan fiction, which in my opinion wasn't very good. It wasn't good then, it's not that good now. But the purpose of it allowed me to learn grammar rules. It allowed me to learn the words that I was misspelling over and over again, and eventually I got them. I could understand them. I could spell them without even thinking. So when I hit my sophomore year, at the very end of the year, I began to write short stories. It was a part of my class requirement, and I found out I really liked them. So I started writing some fantasy short stories that were fun. They looked a lot like certain games that I had been playing at the time, like Legend of Zelda and Crash Bandicoot, things like that. They were very similar storylines, and I realized that, so I started drifting more and more apart. When I hit my junior year, I began writing Pandora, my first novel, and I completed Pandora for NaNoWriMo. And during NaNoWriMo, it's National Write a Novel in a Month. And I wrote Pandora in I think it took me about 6 months, but I had started it with the concept of going into NaNoWriMo, although I did start it in August, not in November. But I began writing it, and I eventually got over 300 pages written. I did publish it under self-publishing, but I did not make it for public resale. I only did it so I could have a physical copy of my book. But that made me start thinking that I could write more. So that's when I started on The Game, which was the original working title of The Rules Are Simple Survive. I actually started with no concept in mind. I didn't even know who my main character was. I didn't know what the premise of the show was. Well, book. I didn't even know the premise of the book. I just started writing. I wrote the first chapter, and I began to fall in love with this idea of these kids being trapped in this world and having to fight their way out tooth and nail. I found that I really liked taking people and unrealistic situations and making them seem so real that the audience can't help but ask if that was even possible to begin with. The Rules Are Simple Survive is, I guess I should explain what it's about first. A mysterious stranger known as the cell phone killer has designed a game for the reveal of his true identity. He takes young people from the ages of 15 to 18, where they must play a deadly game to discover who done it. With no memories, these teens must rely on their natural talents and skills to defeat the elusive game maker before their 21st birthday, or else it is game over. I love the concept of this book. I began writing it as fast as I could in November of my junior year. And I made my main character, but because I didn't know who they were at the beginning, I decided that nobody would know who they were. My main character's name is John Doe, and just like all of the other members of the game, he has no idea who he is or where he came from. All he knows is that he has to get out of this world. I actually finished the book in 2 months, coming home every single day and writing almost a full chapter because I was so in love with the concept. I managed to finish the book in 2 months. I had no intention of being published. I had no intention of anyone ever reading these stories. But I started editing and I started changing things because I wanted the story to be fully complete. I wanted it to be mine. So after the 2 months of the initial writing, I went back through the story and I changed so much of it. And I did a bunch of grammar work on it, and I had to look up these rules to even begin with. And by the time I finished my junior year, it was almost complete. 1 more month, at the very end of June, I had completely re-edited and finished my novel. I still had no intention of publishing or showing anybody this. I would let my friends read it, but that was just about it. It wasn't until I went to, I believe it was Louisville, for Fandom Fest, which was a convention for video game lovers, anime lovers, and just general fandoms. And I went down to that convention with 3 of my closest friends. And I met an author there named Robbie Midget. Robbie Midget was 1 year younger than me at the time, so I believe he was 15 and I was 16. Yeah, I believe that's right. Either that or I was 17 and he was 16. But I met him at a convention. He was selling his book there, and I thought to myself how somebody that young could have published a book. I also thought about my favorite author, the author of the Aragon series, and how he was 15 as well when he published his book. It made me start thinking that maybe it wasn't such an impossibility that I could indeed get my book published. After talking to Robbie, I found out that he got published by Same Old Story Publishing. I got some information about the company. I really liked the concept that they did, that they were like self-publishing, just with a little extra help and a name to follow. I tried to contact them, found out they weren't accepting submissions. So during that time, I just went on, completely forgot about the game entirely. I just went on to writing different stories and different things. And eventually, in July of my senior year, so 2014 in July, I was talking to some representatives for Same Old Story Publishing, and I found out that they were accepting offers again. So I looked through my novels, the ones that I'd completed, and at this point I had completed 4 full-length novels. So I was looking through them to see which one that I would want to put in for submission. I had put some books in for submission to other companies, and I had been denied, and I'd been given reasons why, and I'd been doing revamps, and I had just been trying to make my books as good as possible in the hopes that maybe one of them could be published, although I had done all of this work on Pandora. But I was looking through my novels, and I was trying to pick which one I thought would be the best to submit to this company. Looking at what they had published so far, they seemed to be more leaning towards sci-fi and fantasy. So I was looking at my books, and I just stumbled upon the game once again. I hadn't looked at the file in probably 6 or 9 months. I opened it up and I read the first few chapters, and I remember just how much I loved writing that story and just how much work I had put into it. So on a whim, I picked that one. Sending it into the company, I wasn't expecting anything, honestly. I thought I would just receive another rejection letter in the mail, and that would be it. But 2 weeks after I had sent in my novel, I received a call back saying they wanted my full manuscript. What I had sent them in before was a cover letter and the first 2 chapters, nothing else. So when they asked for my full manuscript, I was a little bit surprised. I was actually very giddy, and I remember jumping up and down thinking about the idea of it. So I sent in my full manuscript, and within 3 weeks from that time, I get a call on my phone saying, "We want to publish you." I had never thought that was going to happen in 1,000 years. I was driving to my campus for my freshman year of college, and I just couldn't believe what had happened. I was sitting in my car with one of my closest friends, and I was just crying as I was driving down the road from the overjoy of hearing that somebody actually liked what I wrote and somebody was willing to put their name on it in addition to mine and sell it for the public. I agreed when they sent me a contract. I read over it for a few days. There didn't seem to be anything wrong with it. I had my parents help me read over it because I had never signed a contract before. And we did sign it. I did get an editor, and they went through my book, and I made all of the corrections within my first week of college, balancing moving to a new place and all of my new classes and meeting new people. I was going home every day to my dorm and writing my novel again, taking the bits and parts that they said that needed changed and fixing all the grammatical errors. I was just so excited. I managed to get everything out in a week and a half back to the company, and they said we would aim for a publishing date in February. As I worked with them more, picking out the format, picking out the font, and just everything, I worked with some people and I made a cover for my novel, which I'm extremely proud of. I couldn't have imagined a better cover, honestly. I had tried to make, I think, 3 of these by myself before I actually asked for help. But I loved it so much. I got that out in December. We did have to move the publishing date back into the end of March, but that didn't really bother me too much. Just the concept of getting published was enough. I didn't care if it took 2 years. I was just so excited for this. When March came around, I did talk to them about what date we would publish it on. Their initial date that they had thought of was March 23rd. I thought that was really close to my birthday. So for my 19th birthday on March 28th, 2016, I got my first novel published for the public. It was the best birthday gift I could have ever imagined, and nothing is going to top it anytime soon. Since then, I have gotten such great response. I've gotten fan letters from people I don't know. I have gotten so much good advice and people telling me that if I stick on this road one day, I could be a famous author, and that's just something I never thought was going to happen. That's something I couldn't have dreamed of in my wildest dreams. I didn't even think anybody would buy my book, and yet I have strangers from all across the country telling me that they like my story and that they like my characters, that they can relate to Yvette, that they can see themselves as John, that they can love Howard. It's just for people to actually like my story and to tell me that they think my characters are great or horrible people, either one, is such a great feeling, because if somebody has an opinion about my character, it means that I did a successful job at making them seem realistic, that I did a successful job at making my characters seem like real people, like they actually have feelings, they actually have a mind, and they actually have a heart. It actually wasn't until December of 2015 that I even decided to change this book into a trilogy. Talking with my company, I had put some of my work online on fictionpress.com. I have taken it down since then. I had to, it was part of my contract not to have it published anywhere else. But I had it online for a little bit. And I had people telling me I had to write a sequel, that I couldn't end the book there, that I had to do more. After a lot of convincing from both my friends and just some random fans online that I never thought would even care that much, I did decide to change this book into a trilogy. For each book, a different character will be the main character. For our first book, we have John Doe. For our second book, we have Zoll. And for our third book, the character's name is still in a working process, but we have been calling him Casper lately. So I believe that will be his name, but we're not entirely sure on that one. But I was just so excited to hear that people actually like this story, that people were actually caring in the first place, that people were buying it, and to see my sales go up and to receive my first check for being an actual writer. It became real. It actually became real for that I was being paid for something I did on a whim. It's just an amazing feeling. And now to be featured in the Claremont Sun and the Inquirer, and now on the Anderson Community Television Network, it's just amazing. I would have never expected any of this to happen. I don't even really know how to thank all of the people who have made this happen.